In this video here to try to explain to you the startup and thought process behind setting up my city to be able to get coverage on everything. Obviously, the most important part are the manors and where all of those are located in your city to make sure that you have 100% coverage of all of the areas that you need to have coverage. And as you see all the way across with my manors, they're specifically placed. That's the first thing I need to put down to make sure that I have the coverage that I need. You can see, and I'm going to kind of flip over to the Google sheet that I have, looking at the blocks that each one of these manors cover. The red blocks, the blue blocks, each designate the different coverage zone, but there is this dead zone right here in the middle where the orange is, and that's because that's where my Omega was placed. And because I was able to do that is the reason why I was able to, on my bottom row where most of my utilities are, add additional residential units, because I was able to slide my manor down one spot, giving me the opportunity to have all of the coverage that I needed. Because if you look at the next manor with the blue box, it is a larger manor, but I wouldn't be able to get the same type of coverage that I would. As you see, the blue and the red blocks on top are evenly spaced, where the red boxes are reflecting where the manors are. But that orange space was left specifically because I knew I was only going to place Omega housing in that area, and I would not need any coverage from my manors. And that teal box is where my control net is located, and the darker color pinks are where you can kind of see that I went ahead and put my Omegas. Looking up here at the top, you can kind of see the bigger picture of it, but that is kind of the thought process behind my step one when I was taking a look and wanting to make sure that I had coverage for all of my houses. The second thing that I do when setting up a region is kind of plan the parks, because the parks are the one item that will give you 100% coverage when you place them. So obviously I want to start in a corner somewhere, and you can kind of see that box is going to be covered specifically the way the road design is, because it'll go down and break off right where the road is. And each one of my parks are specifically placed the same amount of blocks apart in order to make sure that I have 100% coverage all the way through. Now the bottom, as you can see, I had a little bit of an overlap, or some left over just because of the spacing of the parks. So I was able to still shift out to make sure that I was getting coverage everywhere for my parks all the way across my city. And this is the one specialty that I actually have 100% coverage for, and that is where you can see the 1.6 million boosts that I have in my population. After you take a look at the parks, typically what I would go ahead and, as you see, this is a live video, and I do have dogs in the background. The next thing that is important I'm going to take a look at are my landmarks. The same thing with the spacing. I place them next to each other because when I go ahead and put the second one in, you can see it lines up right on the border. Now obviously when I started with my first landmark, I had to go one spot short because of where this landmark. This is the most important landmark because this is going to ensure that I'm still getting 100% coverage all the way to the edge. If I would have just went ahead and had this one start because it went to the edge, then that means the next box wouldn't have had all the coverage that I needed. So I needed to make sure that both of these would give me 100% coverage all the way to the edge. And then again, I cover that spacing all the way down however I need to get everything to fit. Now things start to get a little tricky once you start getting past the landmarks, because if you want to add space, if you want to add, as you see with the landscape, I had to add bridges some places. That's where you begin to kind of move things around a little bit just to ensure that you're still getting all of that coverage that you need everywhere. But you always want to keep in mind where your borders are for each one of your specialty buildings to make sure that you're still getting all of the coverage that you can. Now, unfortunately, the way that the map kind of lays out here, there's about one extra row on the end, meaning this landmark just can't get all the way to the edge. So I'm either going to be short in the middle of my city or short on the edges of my city. And obviously I chose to be short on the edges of my city only because generally the population is thinned out a little bit more towards the borders of my city. So all the way through, I only have 1.558 rather than the 1.6 million that I got for parks. Still pretty happy with that. After you get through with putting, again, your landmarks in, you can start to space out the spaces. I tried to do my best, as you see here, to be able to put that landscape bridge in between the spaces to get the maximum boost that I could, because, again, landscape is probably the hardest to get the boosts from, just because of you have to use your map to put bridges on them, and that can be difficult. As you see, this little grouping here that I had formed, if you take a look, let me put that back. The population, just from 17 plus 14 there, is 31,000, which is more than I would get from any residential unit, and that's kind of the math that I use. If I could put two bridges next to each other, is it going to give me more population than an Epic would in that spot? And the answer is yes. So that is why I have chosen to place those where I could. Now, the Trinity Bridge obviously gives you the opportunity to space things out a little bit more, just because you get a 30% boost opposed to a 16% boost. But again, trying to space those through your cities is kind of the difficult part. But what I chose is to not have any roads connecting north and south. All my roads run east and west, but in order to be able to not have any roads go north and south, I made sure that I utilized the bridges rather than roads, just to not have to use up extra spaces on my map for things that aren't going to be used. And that's the theory that I kind of used all the way through. And then if you're going to focus on hotspots, fortunately, you do have a lot of flexibility just because of their sizes once they're maxed out at level 10. Some of these are level 9 right now, but level 10 gives you 26 by 26 to cover 52 squares, and you don't need 52 squares from top to bottom. So you have some flexibility to kind of sprinkle those in where you can, keeping in mind where everything else is that you already put on your map. Same with the mayor passes. Obviously, I always go 2 by 2. I want to make sure that I'm going to get 100% boost. As you see, I have 65 there and 35 there. And that 35 there will go all the way to the edge. Even though it's only covering half of that residential unit there on the far left, it will give the entire building 100% boost. So I know in that corner between the 35 and the 65, I have 100% coverage. And that's kind of, again, the same theory that I keep in mind throughout the entire map of my city. And of course it's lagging still. Thank you, EA. And then I place these guys down here to do the same thing to make sure that I have coverage everywhere. 60%, 60%. Obviously the 26 by 26, 60% are where you want to be if you can. But again, the goal is to just make sure you have 100% coverage of every spot on your city. Outside of that, the boosts that I can talk a little bit more about when it comes to beach, I try to go 3 deltas and then a shark tour. As you see, all of these have coverage up to level 40 when they're 14 by 40 or 8 by 40. That means I'm going as high as I can with any beach item. But also, as you see, the shark tours will ensure that the overlap between the 3 will give me 100% beach coverage in those areas as well. Now, I don't have enough shark tours to go all the way through yet, but hopefully by the end of the summer, a couple more will come out. I'll be able to finish that, but that's kind of where my theory was behind the beach. Now, the way that I have everything else kind of planned out, obviously I put a specific amount of Omega in my city, and that's because I wanted to make sure that, one, I maximized the control net that I have. I have used 3,000 of 3,000, so that means I have used 60 in this area because each Omega unit uses 50. And I was able to put 60 houses there to give me a 3,000 to make sure that I'm completely maxed out. Now, as you see over here, I did add 3 more. Now, why did I do that? Obviously, one, I do get a bigger boost in population, but more importantly, when it came to the drones, I had a couple extra drones left over that I could add 3 more buildings somewhere. So I kind of looked at my map, took a account for where I could place those to get the biggest bump and utilize all of my drones. And that's where I came up with adding 3 more of the Omega buildings. Now, obviously, my utilities right now, as you see, I have 6 of each of the Omega buildings, giving me 32,950 capacity, and the demand for what I currently have in my city is 30,000. So I am actually in pretty decent shape, and actually this one's only a level 9, so I could add more if I needed to, in the event they ever widen our map and give us more space out here to the right. But that is kind of the overall thought process behind setting up my city to maximize all of my specializations as best that I could. If you guys have questions, be sure to leave them down in the comments. Again, there's also a link in the video to get you to the Google Sheet, which has the complete layout of my city, in addition to a little bit of a tutorial to show some of the overlapping. So again, a lot of good information there. Appreciate you guys tuning in today. If you like these videos, be sure to like and subscribe. I always love to answer any questions you guys have, but until next time, happy gaming.